This is a presentation on muscle cell repair speeds from pluripotent stem cells by Julian Perez. The news article covered by Mike O'Neill was titled How to Speed Up Muscle Cell Repair. Bioengineers discover factors to trigger for rapid growth. The news article briefly discusses the findings of the scientific article, which specifically discuss triggering of epigenetic mechanisms at specific time points in order to speed up the growth of pluripotent stem cells to develop muscles. While the news article doesn't go in depth on the statistical and scientific analysis performed, the scientific article does. Titled Temporal Mechanisms of Myogenic Specification in Human-Induced Pluripotent Stem Cells, the scientific article discusses the 3 cell lines used and specific genes which were targeted to produce the 3 cell lines. The scientific article uses 3 cell lines, which are labeled TL, SCVI15, and LEPCC3. These 3 cell lines were marked with immunofluorescence staining for myogenic markers. This allowed the researchers to visualize the cell growth by taking images of the cell lines at different time points. In this image, it can be seen how the marker MYF5 progresses in the different cell lines throughout the days 3 through 16. As the cells progress through time, they show different expressions of the marker gene. The researchers also submitted the cells for RNA sequencing at each of the recorded time points. This allowed them to visualize the differently expressed genes labeled DEGs for each cell line. This was then used to create a bar plot for each of the cell lines. This was then analyzed further in a statistical analysis to determine if it was statistically significant difference among the cell lines. This is an image of the bar plots displayed. As the cell lines progress through time, there is an increase in the number of DEGs. This is a sign of an increase in differentiation of the cells progressing towards muscle cells. From this data, R-squared correlation coefficients were calculated to determine if it was significant difference between the cell lines. Overall, the scientific journal succeeded in providing in all aspects of the science communication pyramid. While the wording and topics may become convoluted for the average person, it does a good job of going in depth and covering every aspect of the analysis. The article does a great job of covering the greater and community good, as it first begins with skeletal muscle progenitors derived from human-induced pluripotent stem cells have the potential to play a critical role in the realization of individualized therapies. While a personal connection is not specifically met, the article does make critical points about how individuals are impacted by this research. As for research actions and statistical analysis, both of those were greatly covered as discussed in the previous section of this video. While the news article does a good job of covering the greater and community good and personal connection better than the research article does, it fails at mentioning most of the important research actions and the statistical analysis performed. It doesn't even bring up the R-squared correlation statistic that was calculated in the paper. In conclusion, while the scientific paper did a very good job of describing the statistical and scientific analysis performed, the news article did not go as in-depth as I think it should have. Although some of the statistical analysis done may be confusing for the average reader, I believe it is important to have those in the news article as it allows readers who are more well-informed to understand it. If the data does seem too confusing, then I think the news article should do a better job of breaking down how the process works so that the average reader gets a better experience and understands what the research was actually about, not just the overlying conclusion.